Everybody. This is a special event that we're having to kick off a Mendocino County-wide Drought Task Force. The Mendocino County-wide Drought Task Force is an ad hoc committee of Mendocino County Board of Supervisors, convened by myself and Supervisor Haschak, and I'd like to introduce Supervisor Haschak at this time.
Well, thank you, Supervisor McGorty. So we're hoping to have greater collaboration and communication in this time of drought, and certainly there's been a need for more information, and that's what we're hoping to provide. And we'll be talking about the formation of this water agency today, and we want to make this a very open kind of process as we go through this drought, where we're sharing information and we're helping provide the resources that will help us get through. So turn it back to Supervisor McGorty.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Haschak. I'd also like to introduce on our kind of speaking group today, Josh Metz. Josh Metz comes to us from Regional Government Services. It's a Joint Powers Authority, and Josh is serving in the capacity as the project manager for the Mendocino County Water Agency, which we're dusting off and starting to use again. And Josh is tasked with a number of things, and one of them is going to be to manage our drought response. Josh, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm reading 43 attendees on the list here, and I'm sorry that others can't see how many attendees there are. Numbers keep growing, but I think it just speaks to the importance of the issue. I am honored to be here. I've been involved in environmental management issues for many years, and I'm quite familiar with Mendocino County and the Russian River, having been born and raised in Sonoma County and worked in Mendocino over the years in a variety of capacities. Most recently, I've been supporting the city of Fort Bragg on an economic reuse project looking at their former mill site. And so I'm able to come here and offer support in initially in a phased approach to taking on the major issues of the drought, focused on this Drought Task Force and working closely with Joe Scriven, Beth Solomon, and others already active in the water community in the county, and working to coalesce information, increase connections with regional, state, and federal agencies, and hope to bring more of a focus on the Mendocino County area and funds to support projects in the county. So that's a large body of work, and we're starting off initially with this committee approach, and we'll be working to expand out from there. So I'll pass it back to you, Supervisor McGorty, if you have any other points you'd like me to add.
No, that's great, Josh. It's a good introduction. I would also like to introduce our Assistant CEO, Darcy Antle, is here today. Darcy, please introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you, Supervisor McGorty. Darcy Antle, Assistant CEO and Disaster Recovery here at the County of Mendocino. I appreciate this opportunity. We have been working to collect some shovel-ready projects. We've met a few of you on the call. And going through that process with Joe Scriven and Jordan Blau at Lacone Associates and RCD. So thank you very much. And I look forward to the conversation today.
Okay, and then next on our team is Joe Scriven. Joe is coming back to work for us. He's actually a veteran of the Mendocino County Water Agency, so this is probably, I guess, a reprise for him. So Joe, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Supervisor McGorty. My name's Joe Scriven. I work for the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District. I'm a fisheries biologist as well as the Assistant Executive Director. And my role in the county task force addressing drought is to support the reactivation of the Mendocino County Water Agency, working closely with Josh. And it's a very complex process, and we're looking at the entire county and all the communities that are being affected by this drought. So it's going to be the success of this process is going to really rely upon some clear communication, I think. And I think this is a great format just to get the ball rolling, so we can establish these lines of communication and reach out to the various members of our community. And so I'm here to basically get on the ground and start working. So thank you, Supervisor McGarty.
You bet. So Joe has already started working on the drought and providing information to the community on our drought resiliency task force that was started before this task force, which I hope we kind of blend our efforts together so that we have one voice. And I will also recognize Beth Solomon from the Russian River Flood Control District as a very important person in these efforts. And we'll hear from Beth in just a little bit. She's going to talk about conditions in the Russian River watershed. I just wanted to start just to give you really kind of a brief overview of why we're here. So on April 21st, as we know, Governor Newsom issued an emergency drought proclamation for the Russian River watershed on the heels of the county's own emergency drought declaration the day before. And there's lots and lots of pictures of him standing on the dry lake bed of Lake Mendocino saying, normally there'd be 42 feet of water over my head, but not today. So his proclamation and visit to the county focused the state's attention, for better or for worse, on our corner of the North Coast. However, just a few weeks later, on May 10th, the governor expanded the drought emergency proclamation to cover another 39 counties throughout the state, ensuring that Mendocino County would continue to be the focus of emergency regulation, but would now have to compete statewide for emergency assistance and funds. As the State Water Board considers a curtailment plan for the Russian River watershed under the emergency authority of the governor's proclamation, we still have serious problems throughout the county that, quite frankly, the State Board plan doesn't begin to address because we are not connected. And that's one of the things that is a real issue in Mendocino County, is that in other parts of the state, and the governor actually said this in his proclamation, when there's a problem, you know, there's a pipe and there's a canal and you can connect one water system to the next. And if all else fails, there's big ag pumps that you can turn on that pump thousands of gallons a minute. Well, guess what? We don't have things like that in Mendocino County. So we're going to have to be really creative in our solutions. So our drought emergency is not just about the curtailments that the State Board proposes to enact, but I think the stark possibility that water throughout Mendocino County and Fort Bragg can actually, cease to exist here in a few months. So this is one of the things that we're facing, and that's why we wanted to get together today, was just kind of share what's happening around the county and where we stand, so everyone can kind of get sort of an overview of where we are and what we're challenged with. So I'm going to turn it over now to Beth to talk a little bit about the Russian River, Eel River status and the Upper Russian River water companies. Unfortunately, we couldn't get everybody we wanted to speak today, so we're going to have to substitute a little bit. We won't have perfect knowledge, but we can give you thumbnail sketch of virtually every corner of the county. So Beth, please tell us about what's going on.
Thank you, Glenn. Beth Salamone here. I'm the general manager of the Mendocino County Russian River Flood Control and Water Conservation Improvement District. We focus primarily in the Russian River watershed. We wholesale Mendocino County's portion of stored water in Lake Mendocino. We sell that to farmers and municipal retailers. But additionally, in our conservation efforts, we are interested in county-wide. We consider ourselves stewards of conservation countywide. Through the drought emergency here, I've been working closely with the State Water Resources Control Board and some of our regional partners in the Russian River Watershed, which led to some collaboration with the county as well, and the county-wide efforts, especially in messaging and funding. So there will be some funding that will be coming through that's earmarked conservation drought response funding, and I've been working with the county and Joe, et cetera, on both the messaging and the funding opportunities. I'm also a board member of ACWA, which is the Association for California Water Agencies. Some of you may be members of ACWA. I am your Region 1 representative, and therefore countywide, I'm very interested in finding out what's going on and advocating for our region with ACWA, which, for those of you who don't know, is essentially a lobbyist group, a very powerful lobbyist group for water agencies in California. So if we turn back a little bit to the Russian River Watershed, let's start at the top, which is essentially the Eel River Watershed. As many of you know, Lake Pillsbury feeds into a branch of the Eel River. There is a small diversion from the Eel River to through the mountain into the north end of Potter Valley. It's known as the Potter Valley Project. Due to a lawsuit threat and a Section 7 consultation that is earmarked to take years, PG&E, who runs the project currently, had to reduce the flows into the diversion that will eventually land into Lake Mendocino by significant amounts, leaving us with about 5,000 acre-feet less of water in Lake Mendocino than was originally expected early this year. That basically was the nail in the coffin on many of the water rights, and the State Water Resources Control Board had to, felt like they were at the point where they had to issue curtailments on pretty much every water right to natural flow or abandoned project water in the Russian River system. The flood control district does have access to stored water in Lake Mendocino that we are rediverting for our customers, which include, again, some ag and the municipal districts surrounding the city of Ukiah. We are continuing to work with them and advocate for all water users in the region. We are working closely with Sonoma County Water Agency and many of the Sonoma diverters to make sure that everyone is using water as efficiently as possible along the river so that it doesn't risk the taking of stored water and therefore out of the pockets of our customers, essentially. Sean White is unable to join us today from the city of Ukiah, but as a colleague, I would just share that the city of Ukiah is fairly water secure. They took proactive measures from previous droughts and enhanced their water portfolio. They have about half of their water that normally comes from groundwater and half from surface water. They have a substantial recycling water project known as the Purple Pipe Project.
Beth,
And
Beth, let me just, Beth, can I interrupt? Phil Williams is here, so Phil can kind of.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I didn't realize Phil was going to make it, so I'm really glad to see that. Phil works as a water attorney, and he works specifically with the city of Ukiah. Phil, are you with us?
Yes, sir, I am. So I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Phil Williams. I've been a water attorney for about 7 or 8 years. Prior to moving into outside the city of Ukiah, I was chief counsel at Westlands Water District for a number of years, engaged in some pretty significant efforts. Moved my family up to beautiful Mendocino County to get some peace and enjoyment, and was fortunate enough to tie in with folks like Mr. McGordy and Sean and others. So I focus in water law, but also in public agency law. I also have a master's degree in public administration and public policy, where I focused mainly on conflict resolution and kind of the durable administration of water resources. So I think supervisors, your vision here, I think, is well timed and well placed, and I celebrate it. I also have a master's in law focused on water resources. After that, my wife said, "No more school, time to go to work." was also an Army officer for 9 years, from 2001 to 2010, an Army Ranger and served in Iraq for a couple year-long tours. So I've been working for the city of Ukiah for a number of years now, about 2.5. Sean unfortunately couldn't make it, but as Beth started to say, the city of Ukiah does have a pretty robust portfolio in terms of its water resources. It has access to groundwater through a variety of wells that have been sealed and are actually proven to only be diverting actual groundwater. So we have that supply as a significant asset, not only for the city of Ukiah, but potentially for our neighbors as well. We also have it's called a post-1914 right and a pre-1914 right. The post-1914 right is a significant amount of water, up to 20 CFS, which is about 18,000 acre feet a year. And we have a pre-1914 right that is very junior and is younger than the state of California by only a couple decades. So it's a very senior asset available to the city of Ukiah, as well as hopefully to the Ukiah Valley as well. Current conditions are impacting that. Of course, water users across the Russian River got recently told their post-14 appropriative rights they were to cease using those. And then we're under the emergency regulations, of course, riparians and pre-1914 diverters were greeted with the unhappy news that they were not going to be able to divert that water as well. What exactly happens with that? The state board has not adopted these emergency regulations yet. There's been a significant effort throughout the state, and I've been on the phone for the past 48 hours with a number of entities ranging from ag in the Central Valley to major municipalities opposing the emergency regulations. So we will have to see what happens on Tuesday when the State Water Board considers these emergency regulations. But hopefully they will be able to consider places like Ukiah and the Ukiah Valley, and they will be able to understand that there are some acute needs that perhaps the emergency regulations aren't sufficiently calibrated to address. But that's a kind of a brief update on the city of Ukiah, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and I appreciate, sir, you inviting. Thank you.
We appreciate you stepping in at the last sec. I know you weren't prepared for this, so but of course, given your background, you're probably always prepared. So
Thank you.
Phil is a veteran of the Iraq War, and I think he is as comfortable talking to us as he was to a group of Iraqi chieftains with his automatic weapon in his lap. So hopefully he won't need that for this meeting. So kind of next on the list, I believe, well, it's going to be me. I'm going to talk briefly about what's going on in Anderson Valley. So Anderson Valley is also in a difficult situation with water like the rest of the county. They rely mostly on groundwater and small wells for municipal use. There are a few diversions from the Navarro River, which I imagine this year are going to be curtailed because water flows, I'm sure, are quite low. And most of the vineyards and such rely on water that's stored during the winter. It's diverted out of streams and stored. And of course, rainfall, I think, is adequate for most of the vineyards for what they need. Fortunately, they don't use very much water in Anderson Valley to grow grapes. The Anderson Valley Community Services District in Boonville is in the process of designing to build a system to provide both water and sewer. So they're in the engineering phase, and if the property owners there decide to go ahead with it, they'll have both water and sewer, which I would strongly encourage them to do. But of course, being a poor community, everyone's worried about being able to afford the utility once it's put in place, even though it'll be done with grants and pretty minimal cost to the community itself. So Anderson Valley, like the rest of us, is water insecure. I suspect some wells will dry up, and this is going to be a need all over Mendocino County, is to have water available on an emergency basis for wells that fail. I have 2 small wells that fail dependably every August. So far, we're still working, but Over the years, I've learned to have lots of water storage, and that's how we cope with it. I am on the Russian River. I can take water and treat it if I need to. I do have an emergency exemption from the State Water Board to continue that. They've tried to be as kind as they can to people like myself that depend on water on the Russian River to still be allowed to divert a little bit for basic health and human safety. So next on our list to talk about water conditions is we'll start to move into coastal watershed status, and John Smith. John just joined the meeting, I understand, and there you are. John.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Please introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Sure. My name is John Smith. I've been working for the city of Fort Bragg for about 14 years now. I'm now the director of public works, if I can spit it out. Yeah, so we're pretty much similar to everybody else. Our flows are definitely shorter than usual. We're below 1977 flows on Eel River, which provides half of our water for the city. Our other two sources are 35% behind as well. So obviously 2 years of drought will do that to your spring sources. We're in stage 1 water conservation, 10% reduction for our community here. We have been working with Cal OES and the Water Board Division of Drinking Water, a group. Basically, I've been meeting with them every Friday to go over a situation. And part of the challenges is we're proposing a desalinization plant for brackish water from our Eel River, which includes a lot of regulatory requirements and a lot of regulatory review. So that's the main purpose of getting together with the water board. The other option we're looking at is shallow groundwater. We just really don't have any deep water wells, especially production wells. We've done a pretty extensive search of the area, looked over the 1,000 wells in the area, and just haven't found anything that's can really produce a good source for us. Sorry for the background, right on the street. But with that, we're waiting for some Title 22 sample results for those wells, make sure they're acceptable to the Division of Drinking Water. We're a couple weeks into that, should receive that information soon. The Division of Finance has been helping us with funding for these projects. They actually have been super supportive, and the process for these emergency funds has been very quick, surprisingly, for the state funding. So we appreciate that and their help there. We too are a severely disadvantaged community, so the monetary help is definitely welcome. Otherwise, we'd have to be pushing back other water projects that we'd be doing in the future. So, which we would do. I mean, if that's the priority is getting water to the customers now, so we need to take what steps we need to get that done. Other options we looked at, I talked about the wells, truck transport from Willits or Ukiah. I believe Willits has a pretty good production well. Also, as well, we know Ukiah is pretty well off water. But we looked at that option. It's just, it's 57 trucks a day for 200,000 gallons of water. It just doesn't make sense. So we continue to look for other options. I even looked at a solar dehumidifier, which is like 30 liters per panel, but very, very expensive option and not possible either. So, but as we go through this, we're definitely working towards a multi-jurisdictional approach to this, because we do have the needs of the surrounding area, the town of Mendocino. I understand that there might be a couple of gentlemen or folks on the line that might be able to speak on the town of Mendocino, but we definitely want to share water. This is an emergency, and we take care of each other down here along the coast. We're fairly isolated, so we need to help each other, and I'm committed to that. But first and foremost, I'm responsible for the customers within the city. So, but we will do everything we can to help out the neighbors, certainly. Do you have any questions?
So John, can you also talk a little bit? Do we have anybody from Mendocino on the call? I'm just wondering. Hold on a sec while I look and see. We unfortunately don't have chat on this.
Understood there to be a couple of board members that should be attending.
Hey Glenn, we do have chat turned on, so if there are any participants on the line, they can chat in.
Why don't we turn on the chat then so that people can chat with us?
It's on.
Okay.
Is MCCSD, is that Mendocino County? Mendocino City CSD, is that? I see them as a participant.
I'm not sure, but
Yeah,
if it is,
so I see
yeah.
that either Christina or Harold, if we can bring them into the conversation. Sorry for the awkwardness of Zoom. So I may be drifting in and out occasionally too, because for some reason my connection is really unstable today. And we, if that happens, Supervisor Hasjack can take over and
Well,
disappear.
Supervisor McGorty, if you'd like, I could do the 3rd district report now, and we could come back.
I've also got Christina and Harold added in as panelists, so they can speak now as well.
Okay, great. So Christina, if you would like to speak, that would be great.
Christina, you're muted.
I'm sorry for that. I was just introducing myself. I'm one of the newer board members of the Mendocino City Community Services District. And as I'm sure you're aware, Mendocino is very unique from a water supply and conservation planning perspective. Nearly everyone here has a very strong water conservation understanding and ethic. Occasionally you have a newcomer arrive, and it doesn't take long before they're educated in the ethics and conservation measures here. And this year in particular, it's pretty dire. The board on May 3rd declared a stage 4 water emergency. That's our most dire stage. And it's requiring a mandatory conservation measures. We rely on groundwater here, as I'm sure you're aware, about 420 independently owned wells. Some of these are very old and hand dug and are not reliable. We have many wells already going dry. So I'm really encouraged to hear what John Smith had to say about cooperating with us. We would really appreciate anything the city of Fort Bragg could possibly offer. It's going to be a very critical year for us. It's not just about our 1,000 or so full-time residents. We have about 2,000 daily visitors, 160 businesses, 25 or so lodging establishments, and with 2 state parks nearby and a school district. We have to be very serious, and we're currently looking at a lot of options. There's a lot of new ideas we're just fleshing out. We have been in conversation with the state. We're very encouraged to hear and see this task force be created. And we are very happy to be a part of the conversation. So if you have any questions, Harold or I would be happy to attempt to answer them. Supervisor Rhodes wasn't able to attend today's meeting, so we're going to do what we can. And if there's any questions you may have that we can't answer, we can certainly direct them to Supervisor Rhodes on your behalf.
Okay, so Harold, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to add a little bit on what Tina had to say. The town of Mendocino has, as she mentioned, everyone in the town gets their water from individual private wells, with the exception of there are 3 small private water companies in the community. But every town, every resident in the community has a water limit that is established for that particular home, and that limit is based on the number of bedrooms that are associated with the home. A 200-bedroom or a 2-bedroom home is allocated in normal times 200 gallons a day. As a result of the stage 4 emergency drought resolution that the board passed, that allocation per home has been reduced by 40%. So we are now looking at a mandatory reduction for all residents within our community of 40% over their normal allotments. And that is for many people, that can be a challenge, although in looking at our reported usage, most residents are able to come in at that level or under, and during this time of drought. So the community is definitely trying to conserve as much as they can.
However, I might add, Harold, that many residents here, not so much residents, but businesses and lodging in particular, are reliant on trucked water haulers who have been coming into the community really throughout the winter, I believe. From my perspective, I have a view on one of the roads coming into town, and I see those water haulers.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tina. We have this year are experiencing, particularly in the lodging community, a very serious water restriction or water minimal well capacity. So they are bringing in, having to truck in substantial amounts of water, and some residents as well are having to truck water.
Yeah, that's a rather scary thought for us as we think about tourism being one of the main drivers of our coastal economy, and the fact that we probably won't have adequate water supplies locally. I mean, at the point of the establishment, and it'll probably have to be trucked in. So,
what's even a greater concern to us is that most of the water that we have trucked in comes from Fort Bragg. But Fort Bragg is also experiencing significant water shortages, and there's a possibility that source of supply could be diminished or eliminated.
wow. Okay, well, that's part of the reason why we're here today, is to understand what this drought emergency looks like around the county. So Christina and Howard, thank you very much. John, if you'd like to continue and move down the coast and share with us what you know is going on in Elk and Point South.
And honestly, I was not able to reach anybody, but it sounded like from previous articles that both Elk and Irish Beach were doing okay with water supply. And if I might be mistaken, but Mendocino might be reaching out to them as well for truck hauling, if I recall. I've been in communication with Ryan, your operations manager, and sounded like that they were doing okay for water out there. So,
what is their source of water?
Honestly, I haven't spoken to them, but reading an article, looked like they had groundwater and surface water in Irish Beach, and I believe Elk has a backup well, but I'm not speaking from experience or a discussion with the operators there. But.
Okay.
Well, and there was a email that we received today from the city of Point Arena, from Paul Anderson, the city manager there, who had some report. He apologized for not being able to make today's meeting, but I can share that. you know, he says that Point Arena's water is served by a private water company, the Point Arena Water Works. The source is a well that draws from the Garcia River, and that they don't use any groundwater. And proprietor Bill Hay informed that he believes there's adequate supply for the year. That said, the city will distribute to residents and businesses water usage materials and the county can provide. So they're obviously part of the solution, but from at least this note, it sounds like they're relatively stable at the moment.
Mhm. And let's see, I don't think we have anybody specifically from Wallala on the line, but I know that the state is very concerned about the water supply in Wallala and doesn't want any more new construction until somehow a water supply is improved. That's that much I know. If anybody knows more about the Wallala, please put something in the Q&A and we'll try to bring you on to speak. Meanwhile, John Haschak is going to talk a little bit about the District 3 and the North County and what's happening there.
All right, thanks, Glenn. So in Brook Trails, that they said that the storage is right below full capacity in Lake Emily. So I think it was 5 inches below the top, which was good news. In Willits, they're at 84% of their water storage capacity. So they think that they'll be all right throughout the season. In Laytonville, Jim Shields gave a lengthy report with lots of good information, but he said that the aquifer has filled up after only half the amount of normal rainfall. And they're using water conservation plans of 10% reductions. Right now, they might have to go to 20%. And up in Covelo, it's anecdotal at this point. I haven't been able to reach them yet, but lots of wells are going dry. So I think that the Willits Brook Trails area, Laytonville, look good, relatively speaking. And that's it for the 3rd district.
Okay, so we've all had kind of a thumbnail sketch over what's going on with Mendocino County as far as water supply, and we can see it's spotty. Some places look good, some places don't. And in general, if we talk about Mendocino County, we know that we just don't have great water-bearing strata and geology here. So we're just basically uplifted marine Franciscan complex rocks of sandstones and ultramafic blue-green stuff. And it doesn't hold water particularly well, and our best sources tend to be fractured sandstones. The one exception, or there are a few exceptions, and there are some alluvium that are formed in places like, of course, the Ukiah Valley is pretty wonderful aquifers. There's also some in Sano Valley and the Hopland area, as well as Little Lake Valley and Covelo and Laytonville. But again, by Central Valley standards, where it's routine to have wells that can produce 1,000 to 1,500 gallons per minute, those are really rare. In Mendocino County, we have very few of those. So we're dependent on surface water, and we're kind of going to have to rethink some of our approaches, because our old thought was in California was that our water supply was based on snow that landed on top of the mountains. It melted, got caught in reservoirs, and was distributed. That's one thing that's changing, is we're not getting the snowpack every year that we used to. And then the second thing that's changing is we would usually have rainfall from year to year that would provide what we needed. So we get into a year like this, which we've had several of them this decade, where we don't necessarily get all the water that we need for the year, and we're having to start to develop strategies of having water stored as we go from one dry year to one wet year. So these are all issues that we're dealing with, and it's kind of problematic. So I can see my computer starting to freeze. Are you guys able to hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. I might have to jump off. There is a question in the Q&A, and I think Beth can answer it if we still have Beth as a panelist.
I did answer the question about Potter Valley Project.
Would you please? And I'm gonna
I did.
leave and try to get back in.
All right, so.
Go ahead, Beth.
Beth, did you want to answer that live opposed to typed?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Let me access it. So the question was, here, I'll come back on video to the light here. The question was, do you expect that the Potter Valley Project diversion will be cut down significantly or cut off entirely this summer? Essentially, yes, we do expect a disconnection between the East Fork Russian River and Lake Mendocino sooner rather than later. The variance that was approved was temporary to reduce that in order to allow stakeholder comment. That comment period ended last week. One of the comments from the same entity that filed the suit that created the reduction in diversion indicated they believed that the diversions to the East Fork Russian River should be further reduced. That would dramatically impact the Potter Valley community. But as it is, I don't think there's much more they can do to harm Lake Mendocino storage, because like I said, we are expecting a disconnect. If you are on video and you look behind Josh, he is displaying a photo of where the East Fork Russian River flows into Lake Mendocino. That looks like it was probably taken more recently. I do have some photos I've published on our website that were taken in January, which is the lowest storage level the lake has been so far. Then we had some rains. It filled up a bit more, and now it is again decreasing. So this looks like it was probably within the last couple of months based on the levels. If you have any more information, I have dropped my email address in that answer.
Thank you, Beth. I think we're going to kind of move on to the next part of the program a little bit, but I want to give you sort of an update of what's going on statewide, and I've been helped a little bit by Sid Nag, who works for RCRC in Sacramento and is kind of giving me an update. Also, I'm going to have to stop my video to see if I can save some bandwidth so I don't freeze and lose everything again. So currently, the state legislature and the Newsom administration are negotiating an emergency drought budget package, and it's expected to be agreed and finalized later this month. While many of the details are still under negotiation, we know that so far that it may possibly include the ballpark of about $300 million to small water suppliers for drought relief, as well as to larger urban water suppliers for water efficiency projects. There are several hundred millions of dollars for water, wildlife, and agriculture conservation programs, from habitat resilience to ag land repurposing to fishery support and fish passages. But for projects of immediate need, the administration is proposing only $30 million statewide for drought assistance and emergency water supplies. The legislature is proposing more money and a larger fund for several drought purposes, but their proposal would cap funds to only $5 million per community, which is not very much. You can go through money fairly quickly in any kind of a construction project. However, this drought budget package gets sorted out. It may miss the mark when it's needed the most. The funding needs to ensure our communities can withstand shortages in coming months, not coming years. And this is the problem with some of these applications. The money won't even be available until November. So that's not going to help us on a kind of a short-term need. And that's what we're very, very concerned about. And while the situation is increasingly dire, we do have the advantage of a head start, including and especially through the important work of this Drought Task Force. So the fact that we're talking and communicating is really, really important. It doesn't hurt that tomorrow I'm going to have coffee with State Senator McGuire so I can tell him, hey, we need to do something on the short term because we've got some real critical situations in our county. So I highly suggest we think about needs for emergencies we're bound to face in the coming months. We need to anticipate the worst of circumstances, think outside the box for solutions, and get going in detailing what we need specifically in terms of planning, community messaging, equipment and infrastructure, and water supplies. We need to be ready to get in front of the line for state assistance, as well as examining how we cover gaps through our resources if necessary. So that's why it's so important that we're talking now, because we have to be really, really proactive if we're going to be able to deal with the crisis in front of us. So kind of next on our agenda is, what is the concept of the countywide drought task force? And I was wondering if Josh, if you'd be willing to lead this discussion.
Sure, thank you, Glenn. Yeah, so we have been working, I've joined the conversation on this topic really intensively in the last couple of weeks. We've pulled together on the ground kind of support team with expanding with Joe Scriven from the Conservation District and increasingly with Beth and others from the already active water managers group in the county. Initially, what we're scoping out for this task force is kind of three key areas. The first is focused on this emergency response and sort of establishing a triage type approach to understand throughout the county where there are grave needs for health and human safety issues, and working with OES and other emergency service alternatives to bring solutions there. Secondly, looking at the question of economic impact and viability to our communities, as the health and well-being of the communities really does depend on people having a thriving economy. And of course, as much as possible, being concerned and actively engaged on the focus of habitat and resource conservation. So this task force would be a forum for kind of these types of discussions on those priority areas. We're also working closely with the RCD and the county administration on identifying key projects throughout the county that would be the subjects of pursuing some of that funding that Glenn mentioned. So we have a list already going, and if your community has not submitted projects to those lists, to us on that list, please bring them back or email them as soon as possible. Both, I'll put my email address up on the screen here. And then more generally, we want to serve as an information hub for the county, and we'll be building out some web resources using a domain, mendowater.org, and that will continue to be built out and then updated regularly based on the outcomes of the work of this committee. We're proposing that the task force would meet on a bi-weekly basis, and following the progress that we make in these convenings, potentially breaking out into smaller subgroups to focus on other topics. But that's sort of the initial approach, and subsequent to that, there would be work with the county board of supervisors and administration in framing out what the next iteration of the county water agency will look like. And that will be an ongoing discussion over a period of months, leading to a future expanded capacity there that would hopefully be ongoing, because we know that droughts and droughts are not singular year events, but they build up over time, and increasingly in the face of the climate emergency that we have upon us, drier years lead to drier years, and we want to be able to get in front of that. So looking at supply alternatives, connecting communities such as Ukiah and Redwood Valley and communities on the coast. All of those subjects would be the purview of this committee, as far as I understand, and it would really be here to serve the county and be a resource to the Board of Supervisors to help with their policy decisions, as well as a single point of contact for pursuing state and federal funding.
Okay, Josh, thank you for that. Joe, I don't know if you're ready to talk about this, but Joe has been kind of gathering some of our projects. He maintains a current project list, and he is our contact. Joe, do you have anything to add?
Sure. I just to complement what Josh was talking about, this project list related to drought response and preparedness. This is being a request being put out to all those in attendance and to all water purveyors in the county, and then water customers as well. So if there are projects that can improve your water conservation, your water efficiency, your water security for your community, that's really what we're looking at. And we're establishing a new email address here at my agency, the Resource Conservation District. And so you can send me an email at drought@mcrcd.org. So right now we've got a list of about 30 projects ranging in costs from $10,000 to $7 million. And it's a range of needs that that's only 30 projects, and we probably have another 300 in the county that need to be identified. So part of this effort that this task force is looking to do is gather the information of what the needs are in the county from all corners of our county and all communities that are involved, to find out what's out there, because we expect that there will be grant funds made available. And it'd be nice if they were just a block grant and we didn't have to actually compete for them, but that's a detail yet to be addressed. But the first step is getting the project on the list. And so we've got it's a basic spreadsheet. And if you want to email me at drought@mcrcd.org, I can give you the template. Basically, it's the watershed, the funding request that you anticipate, the total project cost if you're coming in with a match, a brief description of what the project is, and maybe a status level if you've completed any planning, or if you've gotten any environmental permitting completed. That would be great to know. A timeline when you expect this project to be done, if you had funds available, say, as soon as possible. And then we need a primary contact person. And so I'll be working on maintaining this list with Josh and with a colleague of mine at Laco Associates, so that way we can continue this living document, and it can be a tool that the Drought Task Force can use to be able to put money on the ground when it is available. And the need that is out there is huge. And this is a mechanism for anybody in this county to provide input, to say, hey, we need this. I saw a text or a message regarding a lot of aggressive well drilling or water transfers in Round Valley and water haulers. And I don't know how the Round Valley Water District would address that, but that would be a conversation worth having to improve water security for the folks who live there. So, so that's all I have to say regarding this topic. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joe. So now we'll go kind of to our Q&A, and I will. So what we have, Supervisor Haschak, would you like to do that?
Right, very good. So let's see. So the first question is, well, I believe the Gualala MAC is organizing a community water forum at some point in the near future. Is that true? Is anyone from Gualala here who could answer that? Well, we'll come back to it. Okay, many on wells on the coast are using Fort Bragg to do laundry, as many wells have been dry since last year. This also goes for those down the coast. At any point, will the city of Fort Bragg prioritize the people who live here in Fort Bragg over lodging industry and tourism when it comes to water availability? So, is John on the line still?
Sure. So I assume when we get to that point, when we're starting to, our flows are getting lower and we don't have any other water to supplement, it'll be a council decision. I mean, it's not going to be something that I decide, certainly. But, you know, we're not sure. We haven't been there before. Hopefully we don't get there, but, you know, it's going to be difficult to navigate through that, certainly.
Yeah, this is the thing that really concerns me, is that we have an industry on the coast that's dependent on water, and Mendocino County is dependent on the tax base of that industry through TOT and also just assessed value. So anything that injures our tourism it affects us greatly, and we've already been through COVID, and it's not fair. It's not fair what's happened to us. I just feel like we're getting crushed. So anyway,
some of it's we're gonna have to deal with logistics too, because I don't believe that there's that many trucks here on the coast. I think there's 3, maybe a 4th. So we'll see how that plays out also.
Okay,
so,
John, while you're still on the line, what is the current storage and storage capacity for the city of Fort Bragg?
Raw water storage is about 22.6 million gallons, and we have 5 million finished water.
Okay. Then we have a couple questions about water hauling, and Joe kind of addressed the one about Round Valley, but can we also make note of the large amounts of water trucks pulling water out of the aquifer at high rates here in Round Valley as well? This is an issue the community has raised many times with great concern, as we are all on wells here. I'm curious about how this might be addressed, considering we are seeing decreased well levels here in Round Valley County Water District reports. And, okay, so Joe, did you want to say anything more about that? Certainly it's a concern.
I think having a conversation maybe with you, Supervisor Haschak, and the Round Valley Water District, I would like to be part of that conversation to find out if there's a solution out there, but it's a complex issue, so I don't have any solution right now.
Okay, so let's set up that kind of meeting for next week, all right? Okay, and if water hauling becomes a major need to more than 10% of our communities over an extended period, the governor should consider activating the state's National Guard for critical transportation support services.
yeah, that's a real interesting one, and what I was thinking about is actually barging water from San Francisco and large and inflatable water bags, but I don't know that would actually be enough to be useful. But for some of the smaller communities, we're going to have to think outside of the box as we go through this. You know, that it might work for a place like Mendocino. It might be enough water. Who knows? So anyway.
Okay, and here's a big picture question. How is the county responding to the proposed 2-basin solution, which calls for removing Scott Dam? Certainly that's a concern of people's, so.
Yeah, so the short answer is that we're doing a lot of studies now that are being directed by FERC, the Federal Energy Resource Commission. Am I saying that right? And anyway,
Regulatory.
yes.
Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Thank you. I can't remember all these acronyms all the time, especially late in the day when my blood sugar is getting low. So, so we're doing studies right now that are looking at that, and there's many problems to this quote unquote two basin solution. So the first one being that when you take down the dam, there's a lot of sediment behind it, and what you do with that sediment is immediately a problem, because if it was all released into the Eel River Basin, it might do irreparable environmental harm. And that's one of the things that has to be thought about. Not to mention the fact that in this two basin solution, Lake County has not been invited to participate. So they probably have something to say about losing one of their key neighborhoods and all the tourism that enjoys the water in Lake Pillsbury behind Scott Dam. For Mendocino County, the challenge would be, if that dam was gone, we could only divert water during the winter when flows were above 1,000 cubic feet per second, and the last 2 winters that hasn't occurred. So it means that Lake Mendocino would not fill, and it's kind of a severe issue. It's such a, it's really hard for us to get our minds around it. And in fact, this is water day for me. So this is one of 4 water meetings I'm going to. And the last one will be the Inland Water and Power Commission, which tends to deal specifically with the Potter Valley project. And we get routine updates, and they're not always encouraging. But believe me, Mendocino County government is heavily invested into making sure that we have a sustainable water supply. So this is one supervisor who won't sign off on taking down any dams unless I'm guaranteed that we have a replaceable water supply and that it's in place before the dam comes down. That's how strongly I feel about it. And of course, that's probably highly unlikely, but this is something that is going to take a while to figure out. And I appreciate greatly the importance of endangered species and resources, public trust resources. Yes, we do have a responsibility to address them, but yes, we also have a responsibility to all the people and all the infrastructure that's been developed in our watershed, the Upper Russian River watershed, based on the fact that we have water available to us. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but for those of you who haven't heard much about this discussion, it's obviously multifaceted with a lot of really interesting twists and turns, and it's critical to inland Mendocino County for the ability of our county to be water secure.
All right, so the next question is, who is Josh Metz and what organization? So there's probably quite a few people who tuned in late and didn't miss that introduction. So Josh, could you introduce yourself again and what role you'll be playing?
Sure. Yes, glad to do that. Yeah, so my name is Josh Metz, and I'm a senior advisor with Regional Government Services Authority. It's a joint powers authority that operates statewide and provides senior advisors like myself to support local governments in need. And I have particular experience dealing with complex multi-jurisdictional coordination programs, having recently completed the reuse, Fort Ord Reuse Authority at Fort Ord, 45 square mile area, 5 jurisdictions in Monterey County. And now working across the state here, most recently with the city of Fort Bragg on a reuse, economic reuse planning for the former Georgia Pacific Mill site. I have a long history of working in the North Coast, having grown up in Sonoma County, graduated in environmental biology and fisheries from Humboldt State, working with Joe Scriven and my senior advisor there, noteworthy Terry Roloffs. And then from there, working with the ag community, actually in Mendocino County in the wine world, and completing a master's in landscape architecture and environmental planning at UC Berkeley, working in hydrology and environmental management. So from that, I've found an opening and an opportunity to come work here with the county in this particular moment of need. And I am primarily involved at this stage with coordinating this task force and working on a strategic plan with the county administration on the future rollout of the water agency. So the initial focus is convening these meetings and standing up and coordinating information resources. And over the long term, working towards a fully functional standalone water agency meeting specific needs yet to be defined by the county.
All right.
Thank you. I just want to add one other thing for Josh was that he was co-author with me of the agricultural water use in the Navarro Watershed report, which was a very comprehensive look at how agriculture uses water in Anderson Valley and what the potential for the expansion of agriculture was. That was completed in 2013 and still remains a real landmark, important document for metrics of water use in Anderson Valley.
All right, and then from Devin Jones from the Farm Bureau, is there an update on the status of the CEQA review in relation to the City of Willits groundwater supplementation project? My understanding is that they're still doing that review and it hasn't been published yet. So they're still taking comments and everything like that. And then the DWR has the My Dry Water Supply reporting, if people can see that in the chat. And the data set is available for download. Okay, there's the address for it. It is currently only for tracking purposes and is not a funding source, but is a valuable data source that we hope Californians take advantage of. So thank you for that information, Dominic. Jenny says, how long would the current water stored in Fort Bragg last? Should they be cut off from all sources? Days, weeks, just for perspective. Is it going to get people in Fort Bragg area through the season?
So we really use that as a last resort. And we might use it a little bit in the blending process with the desal plant. But other than that, it's 45 acre feet, which is about a little less than 15 million gallons. If we conserve water, well, just figure 500,000 gallons a day. So, I mean, it's limited. When we get to that point, we'll be, even when we get close to that, we'll start early warnings for other options. But that's about it. It's just a small reservoir that gets us through the high tides that run up the Eel River. So it fills gaps for us and worked really well last year. But we'll have to see what the level of the river gets this year. How we use that.
So John, I'm curious, has the city council of Fort Bragg declared a drought emergency and started water restrictions for community members?
We are currently in stage 1, but it's a recommended reduction of 10%. So what we have is a code that is pretty much last minute response to basically it's 10% buffer between filling our raw water ponds and demand, which is way too close for notifying folks to start conserving. So what we did last year is we started ahead of time, try to get the word out sooner, which was very productive for us. And folks were saved 12% right off the bat. So we're trying to get these early warnings out sooner. So the city manager's been working on our new code to update that so we can get this information out to folks sooner without some of these triggers that are more last minute, which is kind of been challenging. So we're trying to work through that this time.
Because that doesn't sound like a whole heck of a lot of water, 4 to 5 acre feet. That's pretty small.
45. It's 45 acre feet.
45 acre feet. Okay. That's much better, but it's still not a lot of water. Yeah, got it.
No, it's not. And yeah, the original intention was to bridge those gaps in the Eel River when we get that the high tides blend with our fresh water and just contaminate the source. so we can wait for that source to flush out while we use that water from the reservoir.
Mhm.
All right, so the next question from Linda Bailey is, could you address the coordinated rollout of the water agency? So, Josh, would you like to talk about that?
Sure.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, maybe
Okay.
I can begin, and maybe Glenn's got some additional comments. You know, there's a history of the Mendocino County Water Agency, which has taken it through a series of iterations within the county as a standalone entity, and then more recently as part of the executive office. There was a budget-driven decision during the recession to move the agency within the executive office and distribute the functions of the agency to different county departments. Given the urgency of the moment and the recognition of the climate emergency, multi-year issues, the board has been contemplating and working with the executive office on once again moving that agency out and creating a standalone agency that would do the work of coordination and working with all the county water districts and communities to look towards long-term solutions to water resiliency. So that's kind of where the target is, and then getting from where we are now on the task force level to that point where there's once again a standalone agency involves some strategic thinking and including looking at long-term funding alternatives. So that's kind of the work in front of us over the next months to year, and I would say perhaps by this time next year, if not sooner, that we would have some options for the board to consider further and take action on. Although I know that the board did take some action just the other day, and perhaps you or Glenn might want to touch on that.
Sure, John, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So we did go ahead with some funding to create this water agency, and I think, what was it?
50 to start with.
$50,000 to start with, and that's just kind of the seed money to get things rolling with Josh, headlining that. And so we look to be able to fund it with a lot of grants, but we do see this water agency as a standalone agency being able to sustain itself. Glenn,
Sure, and I just add to that. I think it's mission critical for Mendocino County. We've treated water very oddly here, and probably because it rains a lot. I mean, if you think about it, Mendocino County is a pretty big county. In the course of a normal year, 7.5 million acre feet fall on Mendocino County. So I think we've been lulled into the idea maybe that we have lots and lots of water, and we do have lots and lots of water. The problem is that we don't store lots and lots of water, and we live in a Mediterranean climate where we're basically for at least 5 months out of the year there's no rainfall. So we have to start to think a little bit more about how we're going to deal with this. And I think our attitude from the 70s and the 80s was that if we build water, it means people will build houses and we'll get built up, and we don't want to be the San Francisco Bay Area. So one way to stop that from happening is not by developing water resources. Well, we're in a different world now, because of climate change. We need to start thinking about having multiple years of water storage so that when it rains well, that we're able to capture some of it and store it. And that can be stored in the ground, or it can be stored in reservoirs, but one way or the other, or tanks, one way or the other, we need to be storing water for ourselves so that when we get into these multi-year dry patches, which is now we're in our second one in a decade, we've got to be able to deal with it. So that requires us to think and develop a strategy, and this Board of Supervisors is totally committed to it. along with the executive office. And really, most people who have any sense are totally understanding of what we're facing. And it's going to be difficult for us to get through it. But I look at the city of Ukiah as being a good example of someone who embraced a drought strategy. And after 2014, when Sean White came on board to head up their water program, he renovated their wells, added a couple new ones, developed a water recycling program. A lot of this was done with grant money, but also investment. And the city of Ukiah now is pretty water secure. They're one of the bright spots in Mendocino County that really doesn't have to worry very much about the drought. So, planning makes all the difference in the world. If Sean and the city council and the city government hadn't decided that those were projects worth pursuing, they would be in kind of the same situation as many other communities right now are of being water insecure. So they've always been in a pretty good place with the underground aquifer, but they're definitely in a better place now. So I don't mean to pontificate or anything, but anyway, we're kind of coming to the end of our program. So John, do you have any other comments you want to add?
Well, we have one more question or statement.
Okay.
What about a dedicated property tax revenue for a water agency?
Well, interesting you should say that. We actually have one. And the history of it I just learned about recently. It was decided around 1970, 71 that there should be money put aside, and they made an assessment, I believe it was 7 cents on every $100. So we do have approximately $150,000, which is not really enough to do a lot. So we do have some money, and we have been spending it. We've actually been doing some pretty good projects through the water agency, the most significant one being the Ukiah Valley Groundwater Basin Sustainability Agency, which is a joint powers authority to manage groundwater in Ukiah Valley. And the good news is that our plan's almost done. It was required by the state. And it appears that Ukiah Valley Basin is pretty balanced. We're not overdrafting it the way that so many basins around California are overdrafted. There also has been a stormwater pollution prevention program that's been enacted. The Department of Transportation has been providing leadership on that to prevent pollution into water during storms, and it involves urban areas and also construction sites and things like that. And they're pretty far along in implementing that plan as well. So those are some of the things the water agency has done. John, do you have anything to add?
Well, I would just like to add for this ad hoc committee that Supervisor McGordy and I are on, I think that we're in agreement that, the most important things are to coordinate our response to this drought, to communicate and make sure the communication is there between all the water agencies and the people of Mendocino County, and then to collaborate and make sure that we're supporting each other, because we're all in this together. And so I hope that with those, the coordination, the collaboration, and the communication, we can get through this without suffering too much. And I think that we have a really good team together. We're working really well. And so I just like to leave it at that. Okay. And if anyone else has anything to say, more than welcome.
Sure, John, if I might, just a couple words. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the work of Howard Deschel and Amber Fassett in the Department of Transportation, who have been really carrying the load of the water agency internally for the county. They have been the workhorse that has gone forward, managed the groundwater sustainability agency process, and so I think they deserve note for that, and also their commitment to continuing to serve those capacities while the county goes through the process of strategic thinking on what the water agency focus and structure will be. in the future. So I really think that that's worth noting. They have been
Josh, we're saying about Howard and his work and his team. You know, they've done a real stellar job without much resource. So they really kept it together, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And really just in my coming up, just getting involved in the last couple of weeks, you know, I've had the chance to engage with a number of folks, yourself included, of course, and Glenn and Joe Scriven, who I mentioned before, and Beth Solomon. I mean, you have a great, and John Smith from Fort Bragg. We've had the chance to cross paths a few times. So, you know, there's a great body of people and with great knowledge there. And I think, as you mentioned, that, you know, this can be a real productive process that we're going through. So I look forward to working with you all in that capacity.
It looks like we have one last question. We're going to have to go soon because some of us have to get on a meeting with the State Water Resources Control Board at 4:30. But the last question is a good one. Is allowing an additional 1,000+ acres of cannabis cultivation in Round Valley within the carrying capacity of the aquifer? If not, can we please set a cap for cultivation that is within the carrying capacity of our aquifer so that we don't run out of water in future droughts? Well, this is a really excellent point, and I know that the Board of Supervisors has taken some flack for our Phase 3 ordinance, and I just want to say that, first of all, no new permits are going to be given out for cannabis in this year and most likely next year, just because the process that we're moving into is CEQA compliant and among the most highly regulated agricultural permitting process in the United States of America. So we're going to be leaders in terms of having a very, very environmental compliant process. The big question is anybody going to bother applying, or are they just going to grow cannabis? And the Board of Supervisors is very committed to trying to stop the bad actors who are growing with no permits whatsoever. So we've really upped our environmental, our code compliance efforts. And I understand that that today they actually closed down a grow on the coast and gave them a bill for $2 million for illegal growing. And so, you know, we're very serious about this because we realize we can't have a good cannabis industry if it's not regulated. And what we have right now, none of us like, and we want to see it change. So that's a very good question. And in the future, new permits will have to do hydrology studies as a result of a suggestion of Supervisor Haschak, who is very concerned about groundwater in the 3rd District, as we are concerned about groundwater all over Mendocino County. So we're trying to get ahead of this. And I know people are getting impatient because they look at the mess in their neighborhood and they say, oh my God, how can you be talking about permitting more cannabis? And what we're trying to do, actually, as far as I'm concerned, is shrink the industry to legal players. And if we do that, and we have regulations, then we might end up with a something that Mendocino County can, I won't say necessarily be proud of, but at least live with. And that's kind of my perspective on it. So we could spend hours talking about this, and we have spent hours talking about it in the boardroom. And Supervisor Haschak is more of an experienced pro at this than I am, and believe me, it's very hard to get our heads around, and that's kind of my comment. Supervisor Haschak, any last thoughts on that?
Well, you know, we certainly couldn't talk about water without talking about cannabis. And so I think a lot of your points were right on. And we will look at some of these issues about overall impact of, you know, cannabis in the water and the impact on water. So, but we need to end this, so we could go on for hours on that topic. Anything else, Supervisor McGorty, to wrap things up?
I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. We've had a really robust participation, and we look forward to talking to you again and working with you individually, those of you that have professional interest in water because of your job, and those of you who are finding yourself in a crisis. We need to know. We really have to get our heads around this as a community a county and do what we can to support each other. So that's my parting message to you.
And before we sign off, CEO Carmel Angelo is on the line. So if she'd like to say anything about this process. Maybe she's not on the line. Anyway, I heard she was.
Yeah. Maybe you call
Okay.
them.
CEO Angelo. Well, since she's not here and time is probably up, let's thank you all for your participation.
If I might, just to know that we'll be sending out notice for the next convening of this task force. So that'll be something that'll be published on the counties, through the county's information channels and email lists.
And remember, if you have any comments, you can certainly email to Drought, DROUGHT @MendocinoCounty.org. Or the hotline is 707-234-6363. So with that, have a great evening, everyone. And thank you again for participating.
Yep. Thank you very much. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.